Walk down a crowded street and the chances are many of the spectacle wearers you pass are seeing the world better by looking through a lens made by Essilor. Essilor is one of the world's leading producers of spectacles and was formed through the merger of two major French eyewear manufacturers, SL and Essilor, in 1972. These companies, known for their technological innovations, achieved a seamless integration. SL was born in 1849 in Paris. Three manufacturers of metal spectacle frames formed the Fraternal Association of Opticians Workers. It relied on a small group of Paris workshops until the end of the 1860s, when it soon became clear that large-scale production was needed. It developed by purchasing more workshops, whose owners then became members of the Société des Lunetières. In 1955, SL launched Nylor, a direct competitor to the newly launched Amour frames, which were being made by Lissac. This was possible due to a new manufacturing technique suggested to Raymond Jules Cotet by English optician Neville Chappell. Nylor sold well in Europe and then in North America. A major contribution to SL's world vision was the invention of progressive lenses in 1959 by research engineer Bernard Martinez.
Quand j'ai fait mes études et que je suis passé de la mécanique à l'optique, j'ai été très surpris de constater qu'en mécanique on avait des surfaces compliquées, alors qu'en optique on utilisait uniquement des surfaces simples, la sphère et le tor, alors qu'il s'agissait de compenser une vision, une faculté, une propriété de l'œil particulièrement intéressante qui était la mise au point progressive à toute distance. Et remplacer cette vision continue par un apport de puissance brutale et en plein champ me paraissait une aberration, entre guillemets. Pour moi, c'est que j'avais étudié en mécanique la façon de réaliser, j'avais été passionné par la cinématique, ce qui fait que l'idée d'un verre à rayons variables et surtout des machines pour les réaliser me paraissait évident. Je me suis donc mis sur ce projet, persuadé qu'il y avait une solution. Le fait que ce soit un remplaçant du double foyer avec un champ, un marché énorme, n'était pas vraiment ma motivation principale. Ma motivation était de construire des machines permettant de réaliser un verre qui soit confortable. C'était l'aboutissement de mon projet, si vous voulez, la vraie motivation. J'ai eu 3 chemins différents et c'est le dernier qui a permis d'aboutir. Les premiers menaient bien des verres progressifs mais qui n'étaient pas satisfaisants au point de vue aberration. Alors au début, pour faire développer l'idée dans la société, ça n'a pas été très difficile au départ parce qu'il s'agissait d'un projet mettant en cause 2 ou 3 personnes. Nous étions très peu nombreux. Donc le départ a été facile, encore que personne n'y croyait. Puis progressivement, lorsque les essais, lorsque les premiers prototypes ont été faits, le noyau qui était au courant à l'intérieur de la société s'est un peu élargi et on en parlait à mots couverts. Alors mon père, dans cette histoire, a joué le rôle du premier cobaye, puisque j'avais besoin, au-delà de ma propre vision, d'un point de vue extérieur. Alors mon père qui portait des doubles foyers, je lui ai fait des verres qu'on a montés sur des montures, des verres pour lui faire tester. Et très gentiment, mon père me disait « oui, c'est bien, continue », mais d'aucuns savaient à l'extérieur que qu'il n'était pas très satisfait, effectivement, les verres étaient très, très aberrants. Mais mon père a été le premier cobaye, si je puis dire, qui m'a encouragé sur ces verres-là. On faisait des verres, alors ça c'est l'une des 2 paires. Voilà, c'était les verres. Évidemment, elles ne me vont pas, mais c'était pour montrer que c'était bien des verres. Lorsque le verre a été introduit, je m'amusais à voir son développement en regardant les porteurs de double foyer sur les trottoirs quand je me promenais en ville. À une certaine époque, je constatais qu'il y avait encore beaucoup de double foyers, puis les double foyers ont disparu Ce qui fait que ma satisfaction a été grandissante lorsque j'ai vu disparaître les doubles foyers sur les trottoirs lors des déplacements dans Paris ou dans les grandes villes.
The numbers of Verilux lenses sold quickly became significant.
Non mais vous vous rendez compte, 1 milliard, moi j'ai du mal. 1 million, c'est énorme. Moi j'ai du mal à réaliser 1 milliard, c'est 1000 millions. Vous vous rendez compte? Alors bien sûr c'est sur la période. C'est sur la période, mais en dehors des smartphones, il n'y a pas beaucoup de produits qui se vendent à 1 milliard. Excusez-moi, je suis encore enthousiaste.
Essilor had the same spirit of innovation as SL. Originally known as Lissac, named after its founder Georges Lissac, it was the first eyewear manufacturer to open a large optical shop in Paris in 1938. In 1947, Lissac created the Amour range of frames. As a result of SL rejecting the range, Lissac decided to manufacture it himself. The range grew quickly and duly sold well, mainly through the shops bearing the Lissac name. From this point on, Georges Lissac chose manufacturing as his main development opportunity. Like SL, Lissac saw acquisition as a factor for growth. The perseverance of an employee of Lissac, René Grandparé, and his research team was responsible for the manufacture of the first CR39 resin lens by polymerization and optical molding. Founded in 1959, the lens Orma 1000 marked the advent of a new series of lighter and more shock-resistant lenses. In 1967, these two companies, SL and Essilor, put aside their historical and cultural differences and signed a commitment, eventually merging in 1972, to become Essilor. They forged a partnership that in time would grow to be the largest manufacturer of ophthalmic lenses in the world.
La fusion s'est faite par la nécessité d'unir des forces. Il y avait deux acteurs importants en France, SL et Essilor, et il y avait nécessité d'augmenter la puissance pour pouvoir gagner des parts à l'étranger. Eh bien, SL était une ancienne compagnie née d'une coopérative qui avait la particularité en 1972, enfin à cette période, SL avait la particularité d'être entièrement possédée par ses cadres. Il n'y avait pas d'actionnaire extérieur. Et c'était très intéressant parce que ça donnait un climat et une motivation et une dynamique particulière. Alors ce schéma particulier qui prévalait chez SL a plu à M. Lissac. Et lors de la fusion, il a essayé, avec les responsables d'Essel, de construire quelque chose qui réserverait, qui continuerait cet état d'esprit. Eh bien, mon principal problème en 1980, quand je suis devenu président, a été de conduire ce gros bâtiment qui s'appelait Essilor et surtout de faire suite aux deux présidents antérieurs. Il y avait en réalité... Alors, les ventes se sont largement développées dans les années 80, parce que nous avions une expansion géographique sur les différents continents et les ventes de Verilux et surtout de Verilux Orma, la version plastique, se développaient à un rythme rapide. Le chiffre d'affaires a pu se développer et donc doubler dans une période assez rapide.
SL first moved to the UK in the 1800s into Hatton Garden, a major European jewellery district. SL marketed frames and some lenses and, as in France, the main activity was to produce optical and precision products and instruments.
What was it like in the early days in Hatton Garden?
Terrible. When I mean terrible, because everybody was used to bifocals, and the Verilux lens was a private lens, so it was quite enormous amount of money to be spent by the public. A pair of spectacles with bifocals would be £2.10, I think it was, and the Verilux would be over 12 pounds. So you could see there was a big difference. So that was a big handicap because it had to be privately purchased.
I started in Hatton Garden in 1974 for the launch of Verilux 2, a bit dark.
You've got to bear in mind that before the war there was a factory there. They were producing lenses at the back of the building, but during the war a bomb fell on the back of the building. That's why the behind the building was lower than the front.
It was a small outfit. We used to sell frames, semi-finished Verilux. There was no surfacing and instrument.
London in the 60s were of course dominated by the miniskirts, the Beatles, later on the Rolling Stones. So there was a lot of activities in London. As far as the optical trade was concerned, very flat. We were the only people trying to bring something new. Verilux was a new concept, a new product, and of course, as it is a new product, we had to innovate. The arrival of Verilux 2 was very important because, you know, we've been battling for almost 8 years with Verilux 1. It was tough. But Verilux 2 was a softer product in the design. Not so much easier to fit or dispense, but it was easier to adapt to. So that makes things much simpler. And of course, when the lens became available in Orma, things went along very well because organic lenses were becoming quite popular in Great Britain at the time.
Orma Optical launched its UK operations during the late 1960s at a commercial site in Hayes, Middlesex.
I saw an advertisement in the Sunday Times for a company. It didn't say what the product was. However, I applied and went to an interview, and they said we make spectacle lenses.
When I first went for the interview, I saw this building and I thought, this doesn't look like a glamorous looking place, up from the first floor.
I can remember the interview day. I actually missed the bus and had to run up a mile uphill for the interview. I was actually 5 minutes late, all hot and bothered.
I wasn't very impressed. However, I got shortlisted. I was sent to Paris and could see the operation there, and I realised there was a lot more into making spectacle lenses than I thought. And to cut a long story short, they offered me the job.
Right, the training at Hayes was not enjoyable, mainly because of the conditions. I found it a very smelly atmosphere. The floors were slippery with the monomer.
I'd come from Italy. I'd been managing a brand new factory. Hayes was a small industrial unit on the second floor. Machinery was second-hand stuff from Paris, and conditions were far from ideal.
Most people were saying you don't want to get involved with plastics lenses, it's a cheap scratch type of thing. But I could see there was a future for it. It was lighter, it was stronger, it was tougher.
When I started at Hayes, plastic lenses were not approved on the National Health Service, so it was in fact a very small market. We had a stroke of luck. The glass manufacturer in the UK ran into production difficulties, and to maintain supplies, the National Health Service decided also to allow plastic lenses to be prescribed. And that meant a big increase in volume for us, and it accelerated our plans to expand the company and probably move out of London.
Health and safety issues were not a strong point in those days, as they weren't with a lot of companies, and I don't think enough knowledge was known of the materials that were being used at the time to actually enforce stricter safety conditions.
Out of the 35 people, probably about 30 people were women, because we'd been working at the time in quite a male-orientated environment in optics. My nerves were going a little bit thinking about working with 30 women, and especially as I had to be in charge of them. They would say things purposely with the idea of embarrassing me, but it's sort of, you had to raise yourself up to it, and it's a good experience for life.
We actually trained in Hayes, I remember a big, dark, damp building. There were 4 of us that travelled up to London on a Monday and came back on a Friday. Although we found it quite difficult, we enjoyed it, and 2 months later, in August 1974, we'd finished our training and we returned back to Thornbury.
As expansion continued, it became apparent that the site at Hayes was no longer suitable.
Measurement of the strength of a concave lenticular with elliptical facets.
We were having difficulty coping with the requirements in Hayes, and the decision was made that we should expand, and I was charged with finding a suitable unit. I was directed to Thornbury, and on the Thornbury estate I was shown some small industrial units at the far end. These were not suitable, but driving in I noticed there was quite a nice site at the entrance. The initial plan from as far as Paris was concerned was to rent a unit, but when we'd found this site it seemed ideal, and the directors in Paris decided that they would finance the building of a new unit. We appointed architects, quantity surveyors, and they came up with plans which were approved. When the unit was finally finished, these were the most difficult times for me, because I was trying to maintain production in London and recruit staff here, arrange for some of them to be trained in Paris, some of them to come back to London to be trained, and also recruit the first staff to start production here. And so I was shuttling back and forth to London for quite a few months. After installing the machinery, we made our first lenses in very late 74. We made our very first lenses, and from then on was probably the most difficult period for us. We had to maintain deliveries to our customers and transfer production from Hayes in London to Thornbury, and this was done over a period of 2 or 3 months, and then unfortunately we had to close the unit at Hayes. I moved actually on the day that the factory was handed over. This wasn't planned, but this is how it turned out. It happened also to be our wedding anniversary, so my wife was not happy. I was here accepting the factory and not at home celebrating our wedding anniversary.
When I moved to Thornbury, the working conditions were obviously a lot better. Clean rooms, everything was spotless. Production in early 75 was fairly slow. It started off quite slowly, but gradually over the coming months and years it increased rapidly. It was quite a challenging time actually, but there was always a goal at the end of the tunnel to be aimed for, and that was, a well-trained moulding department with high quality product produced at the end of it.
The daily order is a very important department in direct contact with the surfacing department.
Despite a successful time of growth and high-quality production in Thornbury, the increase in cheaper manufacturing in the Far East led to some hard decisions, and in 1988 it became necessary to lay off nearly 50 workers.
It was a tough decision at the time, but the future looked good, even though the decision to get rid of and close down several departments was painful. To this day, I found it one of the most hardest working days of my life, was to get rid of people who I'd worked with right from the beginning, recruited, trained, some highly skilled people, and to say goodbye that there was not another job for them to do. I don't think there's any more I can say on that bit. From there, Thornbury moved on.
I must say, looking back, the following years are a bit of a blur. We expanded the company 3 times. The initial unit here was only 7,000 square metres. We quickly had to expand to 14,000 square metres. We then bought a unit next door, which in fact was a builder's merchant. So for a few weeks, Essilor were in the builder's merchant market, but we closed that and had it renovated, and that is the unit that we're now sat in at the moment.
I worked hard learning all the different processes. I was one of the youngest people in there, and I actually found it hard to make the step up to the supervisor and be in charge of people that were, older than me. But I was obviously very happy with my appointment as supervisor. I'd gone from 10 people to 40, and then changed processes completely to customer services, and then to a dispatch function. But it was all a steep learning curve, and I really enjoyed it.
New technologies came on board, new processes came into place, and the company picked up again after going through a dip. And it's ended up, as it has now, a very dynamic company, world leader in its field.
It's impossible to talk about the 80s without mentioning what happened with the deregulation. The government decided to make optics open to everybody. So everybody could dispense spectacles. The NHS schedule was abolished. There was no more NHS frames or lenses, and this system was replaced by a voucher.
A key factor of the growth of Essilor over the years has been aligning ourselves with a key strategical partner, and that was Boots. That came about through a guy called Jackie Fremont, who was managing director here at the time, who was sadly not with us today. It was vital for us at that time to work with that particular large customer, because in the early 1980s, sight test charges applied. So opticians were extremely busy during the build-up to that for 18 months prior to the charge coming in. And then after that, the market was very flat. In fact, it was spiralling down over. It was in decrease. But, we are in great debt to Jackie, because while other companies were really struggling on the market, he got that customer for us, and we continued our growth plan in the UK.
Preparing for the future and checking the present, our research laboratories are constantly active, ranging from basic research to experimental testing, involving everything to do with organic optics.
That's the time where the big chains start to develop. We're talking about Specsavers, and therefore the independent opticians were kind of worried, and they didn't know what was going to be their future. It was also an opportunity for Essilor in order to propose some products which are more in line with the private market. So it was also an opportunity for us.
In theory, somebody could actually get a voucher and go and buy a pair of Verilux lenses with it. So the market was suddenly a lot more open.
We decided that our objective was to grow. Not only to grow with the multiples, but to grow in all the different channels. And to grow faster than the market. Because the market was growing, as I said, 2-3% a year. That was not good enough for us. For the following 10 years, we grow practically by 10% per year. By growing in all the different channels, independent, labs, and multiples.
The success of the Verilux range and the manufacturing agreement with the major high street supplier Boots resulted in a period of sustained and remarkable growth at the Thornbury site at the turn of the century.
The changes in the late 90s and the early 2000s were exciting, but horrific. There was one time when we were convinced that we ought to put all equipment, all machines on wheels, because we were moving them around the sites so frequently. new partitions up here, old ones being knocked down there, departments moving around the shop floor. Horrific, but the technology we brought was stunning. I think the coating technologies were the most difficult to manage because the environment has to be a very clean environment, which I won't say were new to us, but the precision required was new to us. The most interesting of the changes was the introduction of airwear. Airwear is a polycarbonate lens. It's got a very high coefficient of expansion. It's very soft, so scratches easily, which means it's not the ideal product for spectacle lenses. And we found that by attaching a layer of a material that's similar to latex to the lens, and then attaching our hard coating, we were able to keep the hard coating on the lens. We then had to find ways of reflection-free coating that, and this meant new equipment all the time, different equipment. In many cases, equipment that was larger. So we had to recreate the spaces within the production environment, which was a finite amount of space. And that was really difficult. But new surfacing technologies were exciting, new coating technologies exciting. The disciplines required in the coatings were very, very precise, which was a hard learning curve for Essilor Limited. And then there was Carex. I think we've got about 1/4 of a mile of conveyor. Everybody wondered what on earth it was all for, but it gave us a fully automated quality control system.
The calibre and commitment of the workforce enabled the operation to develop pioneering quality control and internal processes that maintained Essilor's edge of quality over the competition.
I was able to resolve approximately 95% of problems presented. The thing is, one of the strengths of Essilor is that we were approachable. If somebody had a difficulty, the customers felt they could actually contact us. We wouldn't just say, well, it's your fault, or throw another pair of lenses at them. We did actually evolve into where we would give talks and go to visit opticians, groups of opticians, and explain how they can overcome a problem.
Through many years, several sites and numerous changes, one thing has remained constant in the attitude of all the Essilor staff and management.
When I think of our great products, our great processes and practices, our good equipment and machinery, all of that really needs the people, the Essilor team to hold it all together.
You see people from all areas of the company meeting together. It's not just segregated. People sit together and talk together.
Now I'm retired, I can tell you that what I missed most is the people. I miss the customers in a strange way. They can be difficult sometimes, very demanding, but when you have been working with somebody for many years, they're no longer customers, they are sometimes friends as well. So that's my best memories of Essilor.
We had a fantastic atmosphere in the company, it still is. It's something that, is part of my life, probably the biggest part of my life, and I'm very proud and being very happy to represent Essilor.
In fact, I would actually go as far as to say that the 20 years I spent here have been the most enjoyable years of my working life. And I would love to relive them again if it was possible. Thank you.
Essilor is certainly my family, and therefore I'm an Essilor man. I've always been, and I always will be an Essilor man.
I've travelled all over the world with Essilor and made friends all over the world. So, yeah, it's a family. I loved it.
I am personally very proud of the company. I'm very proud of the team, of the people here. We all are very, very focused on our jobs. Winning the Institute of Customer Service Mark Award was a fantastic achievement for everyone, and I'm personally very proud of the people who've achieved that. Essilor has a really exciting future. With all the investment, with the strategy, I'm very, very confident that through the Centre of Excellence, through our marketing campaigns, through our new services that we're bringing to the independent opticians, that we have a very strong, secure base that will take this company into further growth in the future.